Arjunadi, good morning.
Good morning,
Would you
Ranganath.
would
Yes.
you like me to read, please?
Oh, yes, why not? It's a one page para.
Shall I start?
Yes, you can. Everybody is there. You can start.
In order to indicate more perfectly his meaning, the divine teacher, the avatar, gives his own example, his own standard to Arjuna. I abide in the path of action, he seems to say, the path that all men follow. Thou too must abide in action. In the way I act, in that way thou too must act. I am above the necessity of works, for I have nothing to gain by them. I am the divine who possesses all things and all beings in the world, and I am myself beyond the world as well as in it, and I do not depend upon anything or anyone in all the three worlds for any object. Yet I act. This too must be thy manner and spirit of working. I, the divine, am the rule and the standard. It is I who make the path in which men tread. I am the way and the goal. But I do all this largely, universally, visibly in part, but far more invisibly, and men do not really know the way of my workings. Thou, when thou knowest and seest, when thou hast become the divinized man, must be the individual power of God, the human yet divine example, even as I am in my avatars. Most men dwell in ignorance. The God seeker dwells in the knowledge, but let him not confuse the minds of men by a dangerous example, rejecting in his superiority the works of the world. Let him not cut short the thread of action before it is spun out. Let him not perplex and falsify the stages and gradations of the ways I have hewn. The whole range of human action has been decreed by me with a view to the progress of man from the lower to the higher nature, from the apparent undivine to the conscious divine. The whole range of human works must be that in which the God knower shall move. All individual, all social action, all the works of the intellect, the heart, and the body are still His, not any longer for His own separate sake, but for the sake of God in the world, of God in all beings, and that all those beings may move forward as He has moved by the path of works towards the discovery of the divine in themselves. Outwardly, his actions may not seem to differ essentially from theirs. Battle and rule, as well as teaching and thought, all the various commerce of man, with man may fall in his range, but the spirit in which he does them must be very different, and it is that spirit which by its influence shall be the great attraction drawing men upwards to his own level, the great level lifter, the mass of men higher in their ascent.
Okay. So, very interesting what he's saying. Basically, we'll go slowly because this idea must become absolutely fixed in the mind and understood clearly. What he's saying is that even when a man has reached liberation, he must continue to work in the physical world. Okay? And then he gives his own example. Now, this example we have to understand very well. We often say that the upper superconscious levels are immutable. There is no work going on there, there is no movement. But there is constant movement in the physical world. And if the divine is up there, He is saying here that I am constantly working. What does that mean? Okay, so this we have to understand. Okay, so to understand this first thing, we have to. I will give you the image of the in any given industry, there is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, sitting on the seventh floor, but not doing the work at the factory floor. But he is organizing through his assistant managers and all. He is organizing the work, and finally the work is being done at the lowest level by the workers. They run the machines. The CEO, the Chief Executive Officer or the manager, does not run the machines. So what is meant? He is immobile sitting on top. So, but he works through his representatives. The divine himself, transcendent, does not work in the physical world, but he is working through nature. Nature is his assistant, and nature is working in the physical world. Nature is producing everything in the physical world. But the divine is there behind, guiding her. Okay? Nature is power, but there is a consciousness which is guiding her. You must remember also there is will and knowledge. Will is power, and if power has the capacity to create, okay, to create. But if it is only creation without knowledge, then the creation will be chaotic and purposeless. So this is exactly what you have to understand. Now, the divine is saying, I am working in the physical world. What is meant by that? What is working? It is nature which is working. But what you have to understand is that in the physical world, if there is movement and action, okay? If there is movement and action, that is work. Okay? So, and if the divine stops acting in the physical world, there will be no movement. And if there is no movement, the world will disappear. There will be no world. That's exactly what he's saying. That I am the one who is working, and everybody else, although I have nothing to gain, okay, I have absolutely nothing to gain. I've got everything. Still, I am working in the physical world, because if I don't, I will be the cause of the death of the world. So that is what it meant. So work must continue. Okay? So yogi also, when they reach the liberation, they must continue to work and be part of the divine plan. This is the basic idea of what is doing. So now we will start. The whole paragraph is only this. And he's trying to convince Arjuna, who is refusing to work. He's saying, no, I will not, because I'll get sin. So he is telling you that you have to rise to a level of consciousness where there is no sin and no virtue. Okay? You have to do what the divine tells you to do. At level 1, the idea of sin and virtue is very, very, very valid. Because if you don't have what is sinful and what is virtue, you will never progress. You will remain static, or rather, you will be very, very constantly doing wrong things. So you have to have understanding of what is right and what is wrong. Level 1. But when you go to level 2, then this business of virtue and sin disappears. Because our virtues are really no virtue at all. It's also a very mixed affair. This also we have discussed in the standards of conduct. Okay, so this is what he's saying. Now, with this background, I will read each sentence and see whether it's clear. Okay. In order to indicate more perfectly his meaning, which meaning? He is telling Arjuna to work. Don't give up the work. You should be interested. Chiki should loka sangraham is the word used in the above in the previous para. You should be eager to work in the world and hold the world together. Because if you don't do that, like if I don't do work, the world will disappear. Since action and creation will stop if I don't work. In order to indicate more clearly his meaning, the Arjuna has to continue to work. In order to indicate more perfectly his meaning, the divine teacher, the avatar, gives his own example, his own standard to Arjuna. All this is in chapter 3, verse 22 onwards, 22 to 25. Okay. I abide in the path of action. He explained, I abide in the path of action, he seems to say. Also, we must remember that the divine has got three poises. Transcendental, above the cosmos, he is not working. He is static. He is silent and static, only watching. But there is also the cosmos. He takes also in the cosmos, it is nature. But behind nature, he is there in the wings. In the nature is doing all the work, but he is there behind, guiding nature. So, that consciousness is there behind the power in the universe. I abide in the path of action, he seems to say. And then at the lowest level, there is the individual. An individual also, the divine is here, but he is not working, he is hiding. Okay? So this is the three poises that the divine can do. So he is talking now of the I abide in the path of action through nature, of course, he has to say. Okay? I abide in the path of action, he seems to say, the path that all men follow. Okay? All men are engaged in action, and I also do that. Thou too must abide in action. Don't become actionless. Don't refuse to do your job and your duty. Okay? Why? He explained. In the way I act, in that way thou too must act. So, what is the way he acts? He acts without attachment, without desire, and without ego. The divine has no ego, he has no desire, and he is also no attachments. He just creates. But the ananda of creation, he just goes on creating. But when we act, we always act with these three things. We have a purpose, we have a motive, and we want to succeed. We want the fruit of the works. Okay? But we have to do it in a nishkama karma, desireless action. The action that has to be done is just because it has to be done. I have no purpose in it. I have no motive. That should be the attitude. So that's what he's saying. Okay? In the way I act, in that way, thou too must act. I am above the necessity of works. I don't need to work, for I have nothing to gain by them. I am the divine who possesses all things and all beings in the world. And I am myself beyond the world, that's a transcendent, as well as in it, that's a cosmic. And I do not depend upon anything or anyone in all the three worlds for any object. And what are the three worlds? The gross world, the subtle world, and the causal world. Okay? The Virat, the Hiranyagarbha, and the Prajna. So these are the three levels. When you divide it in a very, just into three, you divide into three, these are the three. That's what. The gross world, the subtle world, and the causal world. Okay? So he says, in the three worlds, I have nothing to gain, but still I act, yet I act. This too must be thy manner and spirit of working. So work without any wanting to get a result. Just do the work. But at a physical level, there is a problem. When you tell someone, do the work without expecting the fruit of the work, then our interest slides. When our interest becomes very sharp and very intense, when we expect a result. But the yogic action, you should not expect any, you should give up the fruit of the works to the divine. Okay? And that's not easy, karma yoga. So that's what he's saying. This too must be thy manner and spirit of working. I, the divine, am the rule and the standard. It is I who make the path in which men tread. I am the way and the goal. I am also the way and I am also the goal. But I do all this largely, universally, visibly in part, but far more invisibly. Visibly is only at level 1. Okay? We see the physical world working, and when the divine is saying that I am visible in the physical world, he means that the action is visible. But in the higher planes, his action is not visible to us. That's what it means. And he is not saying that I am visible in the physical world. He is saying my action is visible in the physical world. Okay? And men do not really know the way of my workings. They are ignorant. I am doing everything from on top, but they don't understand. Thou, when thou knowest and seest, okay, not seekest, when thou knowest and seest, when you see, when thou hast become the divinized man, must be the individual power of God. Thou must be the individual power of God. When you have realized the divine, when you have become divinized man, you must become the power of God. Don't be only the knowledge of God and without any action. You must also be the power. Okay, that's what he's saying. Knowledge will come automatically. But like the Buddhists and the Mayavadin, don't give up the physical world. Power is necessary. Power, action, necessary. The human yet divine example, even as I am in my avatars. So he's giving an example. The avatars are divine in consciousness, yet they continue to work in the physical world. Most men dwell in the ignorance. Level 1, in the ignorance. You don't know anything. The God seer dwells in the knowledge. But let him not confuse the minds of men by a dangerous example. And what is that example? Like the Buddhists and the Mayavadin, I don't want to work in the physical world. Okay? If he says that, then everybody will be, they'll be setting a bad example to the others. They will also, if they stop working, then what will happen? Everybody should work at the physical level. Rejecting in his superiority the works of the world. When the minds of men, okay, they should not be given this knowledge that works in the world is binding and it will give you only ignorance. That should not be imparted to them. They should continue to work. The goal of the Mayavadin and the Buddhists is not a good example for the common man. That's what he's saying. Rejecting in his superiority the works of the world. He feels that the works are all movement, and movement is binding. There's bondage there, so we don't want to have anything to do with that. That's a bad example. Let him not cut short the thread of action before it is spun out. Okay, he can give up the physical work temporarily when he is seeking for liberation, after he has been liberated. But then after that, Srimad is going even further and saying that even after liberation, you have to work. Okay. Rejecting in his superiority the works of the world. Let him not cut short the thread of action before it is spun out. Let him not perplex and falsify the stages and gradations of the ways I have hewn. Okay. So, again, there is a reference here to the standards of conduct. When you have the standards of conduct, okay, at the lowest level you must work. You must work. So don't apply the standard of the fourth standard of the divine knowledge to the lowest level. Then there will be confusion. So, let him not cut short the thread of action before it is spun out. Let him not perplex and falsify the stages and gradations of the ways I have used. The good example of this higher knowledge being given to a man at the lower level of consciousness is the story of Ramakrishna, where he says the Guru is telling the disciple that everything is Brahman. Sarvam khalu idam Brahman. Now this is not true at all for the human being. When he is in ignorance, Sarvam, where is the divine? The divine is not here for you. But if you are at a higher level of consciousness, yes, the divine, you see it, the divine everywhere. But if you don't see the divine, then you must act at that level, honestly yourself. So he is going in the road, and the elephant comes with a mouth on top of the elephant, and the elephant is in musk. We all know the story. Right? The mouth shouts to him to get out of the way, otherwise the elephant will harm him. He remembers, Sarvam khalu idam Brahman. The elephant is Brahman. How can he harm me? So he is misapplying the knowledge. And the elephant takes him by the trunk and throws him. He gets badly injured. Goes back to his Guru. And the Guru tells him, why didn't you listen to the Mahut? He is also the divine. So you are misapplying a higher truth at a lower level. So that is what Gita is saying. Don't give higher knowledge to those who are not fit for it. Okay, he is giving example only of action, but that's what it meant. The whole range of human action has been decreed by me with a view to the progress of man from the lower to the higher nature. There are gradations, and at each level, the values of that level are valid for you, but not for the other planes. Okay? Either upwards or downwards, they are not valid. From the apparent undivine to the conscious divine. So those are at the undivine level, don't give them divine knowledge. They will confuse them. Okay? The whole range of human works must be that in which the God knower shall move. Okay? The whole range of human works must be, ideally, that in which the God knower shall move. All individual, all social action, all the works of the intellect, the heart and the body are still his, not any longer for his own separate sake, but for the sake of God in the world, of God in all beings. And all those beings may move forward as he has moved by the path of works towards the discovery of the divine in themselves. I'll read that sentence again and identify what he's saying. The all individual, all social action, all the works of the intellect, the work of the Brahmin, because he is the, at the highest, he is using his mind. The heart, okay, the heart is the either the Vaishya or the Kshatriya also to a certain extent, and the body is the Shudra. So he is including all, or everybody, all human beings are his, not any longer for his own separate sake. If you are a God knower, whatever level you are, you will be doing the work not for yourself but for the divine. Is it possible for this raises a question. Can a Shudra be a God knower? Absolutely. Okay. There is in the Chandogya Upanishad, there is a cart puller. He is pulling the cart, but he is a Brahman knower. And also remember, very interestingly, that this Brahman, this caste system in India is absolutely artificial. The truth behind it is quite different. Note interestingly that Sri Aurobindo was a Vaishya. Okay? He was not a Brahmin, and yet he is a Brahman knower. Okay? Take Rama, take Krishna, okay? Take all these people, take Buddha. They were all Kshatriyas. They are not Brahmins. So there is no bar on anyone knowing the divine. Okay, remember that. So, all individual, all social action, all the works of the intellect, the heart and the body are still his. Okay? Not the divine. The divine, not his own work, but the divine work. Not any longer for his own separate sake, but for the sake of God in the world. Okay? In the world. God is working in the world. And you are also working, do it for God. Of God in all beings. So God in the world, nature, cosmic. God in all beings, the individual. And that all beings may move forward as he has moved by the path of works. Everybody should do works towards the discovery of the divine in themselves. So if you do that, you will be able to discover the divine in yourself and in the cosmos also. Outwardly, his actions may not seem to differ essentially from others. What he means is that the Brahman knower's works in the physical world will be apparently the same as everybody else. Okay? But you will not be able to make out the difference. This is actually Arjuna's question to Krishna. He says, you are talking of the God-realized man. Tell me, how does he talk? How does he sit? How does he move? I want to know. Okay? How can I know that he is a Brahman knower? So the Sri Krishna tells him, there are no outward signs. That's exactly what is meant here. Outwardly, his actions may not seem to differ essentially from theirs. Battle and rule, as well as teaching and thought, and all the various commerce of man. Again, he is repeating he is including everybody in the in his working, battle and rule, Kshatriya, as well as teaching and thought, Jnana. Okay, that is the Brahmin. And all the various commerce of man with man. Okay, so then again there is a hint of the Vaishya. Okay, so may fall in his range, but the spirit in which he does them must be very different. Everybody must not do the work for themselves, but must do it for the divine. And it is that spirit which by its influence shall be the great attraction, drawing men upwards to his own level. The great lever or lever, whatever you want, lifting up the mass of men higher in their ascent. I should be the example. You should be the example to the others who are lower than you. That's what it is. Okay, so we have 15 minutes. We'll read the next paragraph. The giving of the example of God. Okay, so we'll read. Archana, you got the text? Yasmin has finished reading. And Pallavi, if you have the text, you can also read.
Okay, Rangada, I'll read.
Okay, go ahead. The giving of the example of God.
The giving of the example of God Himself to the liberated man is profoundly significant, for it reveals the whole basis of the Gita's philosophy of divine works. The liberated man is he who has exalted himself into the divine nature, and according to that divine nature must be his actions. But what is the divine nature? It is not entirely and solely that of the Akshara, the immobile, inactive, impersonal self, but for that by itself would lead the liberated man to actionless immobility. It is not characteristically that of the Kshara, the multitudinous, the personal, the Purusha, self subjected to Prakriti. For that by itself would lead him back into subjection to his personality and to the lower nature and its qualities. It is the nature of the Purushottama who holds both these together and by his supreme divinity reconciles them in a divine reconciliation, which is the highest secret of his being. Rahasyam Haityad Uttamam. He is not the doer of works in the personal sense of our action involved in Prakriti. For God works through his power, conscious nature, effective force, Shakti, Maya, Prakriti, but yet above it, not involved in it, not subject to it, not unable to lift himself beyond the laws, workings, habits of action it creates, not affected or bound by them, not unable to distinguish himself, as we are unable from the workings of life, mind, and body. He is the doer of works who acts not kartaram akartaram, no me, says Krishna. For the doer of this, the fourfold law of human workings, who am yet the imperishable non-doer. Works fix not themselves on me, nor limpanti, nor have I desire for the fruits of action. But neither is he the inactive, impassive, unpuissant witness, and nothing else, for it is he who works in the steps and measures of his power. Every movement of it, every particle of the world of beings it forms is instinct with his presence, full of his consciousness, impelled by his will, shaped by his knowledge.
Okay, so it's a further exposition of the same idea. Okay, so we can do that quickly and identify what he's saying. The giving of the example of God himself, we've got 10 minutes, that's why we'll go through hurriedly. The giving of the example of God himself to the liberated man is profoundly significant, for it reveals the whole basis of the Gita's philosophy of divine works. The liberated man is he who has exalted himself into his divine nature, into the divine nature, and according to the divine nature must be his actions. Okay. But what is the divine nature? it is not entirely and solely that of the Akshara. So we come back to the basic idea of the three levels. The first level is Akshara, because the divine is here, and who is the divine in the level one? It's a psychic being, and the divine presence in everything. That is mutable. Your psychic being is actually developing. It is not static, it is developing. From the very, very low level of the soul, it slowly through many lives, it develops itself and finally reaches the psychic being in man. Before that, it's not the psychic being, it's a divine presence, the soul. Okay, so that is Kshara. Level 1. Level 2, the Akshara. When your consciousness escapes from the body mind life and goes to the spiritual planes of consciousness, where there are four, the higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, and the overmind. So there you are the Akshara. That means there is no movement at all. There is static condition, silent, inactive, only witness, watching without acting. Okay, that is the Akshara. The Akshara. And in India, until now, that had been the basic realization. Realize the Brahman consciousness, and that's enough. That's a liberation. But the Gita is going beyond more. So the ones who follow the Gita, they have to do all Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. So the Gita is going to the Purushottama, the third level, level 3. And the Purushottama is the one who is personal as well as impersonal. Remember that in the Akshara consciousness level 2, 90% of the time, it is the impersonal aspect of the divine. You don't see a divine anywhere. But in level 3, you see the form of the divine which you want to see. In whatever form you want to see him, he is there. But he is in the personal aspect. You can ask him questions and you can talk to him, you can have a relation with him, you can love him, and he will respond. Okay? So that is what the Gita's speciality. And that's the Uttamam Rahasyam. It goes on repeating. The Gita goes on saying that this is the Guhyatamam secret. Okay? Guhyatamam truth. These are most secret truth. So that's a Purushottama. Akshara, Kshara Purusha, Akshara Purusha, Uttama Purusha. And you reverse the and call it Purushottama, Purusha Uttama. Third level. It is the nature of the Purushottama. Oh, sorry. No, I have to read from. But what is the divine nature? It is not entirely and solely that of the Akshara. Okay? Partly it is, but it's not entirely that. The real entire divine action will be the third level. The immobile, inactive, impersonal self. Level 2, as I said, spiritual plane of consciousness. For that by itself would lead the liberated man to actionless immobility. But that's not what the Gita wants. Nor Sri Aurobindo. They want you to act in the physical world. It is not characteristically that of the Kshara. The Kshara is a psychic being of which you are not even conscious, no, 90% of the time. The multitudinous, the personal, the Purusha, self-subjected to Prakriti. Now, he is not saying Purusha subjected to Prakriti. That's what it seems to be. But actually, it is self-subjected. The soul has itself taken a decision to come down into the body-mind life and imprison itself and then escape. So this is a self-imposed subjection, self-imposed ignorance. Why? We come back to the basic idea of the Leela. It's an adventure of consciousness. Okay? They are self-subjected to Prakriti. For that by itself would lead him back into subjection to his personality and to the lower nature and his qualities. It is the nature of the Purushottama who holds both these together and by his supreme divinity reconciles them in a divine reconciliation. What is the reconciliation? Action and non-action. Personal aspect of the divine and the impersonal aspect of the divine. How can you have action and non-action? That is what is saying, kartaram, akartaram. That means to say, the body-mind life at the lower level is continuing to act. But your consciousness is static. It's only watching. Inside you are calm, quiet, no movement at all. Neither thought movement nor emotional movement. Absolutely calm. And you are still continuing to work in the physical world with your body, your vital, and your mind. You are still using all these three to work in the world. But you are the akartara, you are the non-doer. Okay? He is not the doer of, okay, sorry, for them in a divine reconciliation, which is the highest secret of his being. Rahasyam hi etad uttama. Rahasyam hi etad uttama. He is not the doer of works in the personal sense of our action involved in Prakriti. Normally we feel ourselves in level 1, we feel that we are doing. That's ignorance. Okay. Level 2, you realize that you are not doing, nature is doing. Level 3, you realize that God is doing through nature in the individual, and yet you are not conscious of it at that level, at the lower level. For God works through his power, note that clearly. God is not working directly in the physical world. He is working, but through his power. And what is that power? Conscious nature, effective force of Shakti. Shakti, Maya, Prakriti. These are all equivalent words to a certain extent. Yet above it, but he is still above. Part of him is above, and he is working through nature at the lower level. But he is not involved in it, not subject to it, not unable to lift himself beyond the laws, workings, habits of action it creates. Now, which level is this? Laws, workings, habits of action it creates? Level 1. Okay? So he is not at all bound. He is not bound at all. Not affected or bound by them, not unable to distinguish himself as we are unable from the workings of life, mind and body. He is the doer. Who is the he? The realized, the Purushottama level. He is the doer of works who acts not. Okay? In the higher level of consciousness, he is not acting. But he is being, the body, mind, life is being used by the divine to do work in the physical world. Kartaram, but akartar. Know me, says Krishna, for the doer of this. That's a fourfold law of human workings. There is a fourfold law of human workings, the caste system. Who am yet the imperishable non-doer. I never act in the physical world directly. Works fix themselves not on me. Na limpanti. They do not cling to me. This idea is very much given in the very first, second verse of the Isha Upanishad. Na karma lipyate nare. Because that was the idea in the ancient Indian that karma will always bind you down. It will give you desire, attachment and ego. But very clearly it is being said here, na limpanti. They do not bind you. You don't need to be bound. Nor have I desire, nor have I desire for the fruits of action. I just do it because it has to be done. But neither is he inactive, impassive, unpuissant. The word unpuissant, Swami is taking the liberty. The word doesn't exist in the dictionary. It is impuissant that is there in the dictionary. But Swami has used the word unpuissant. Witness and nothing else. For it is he who works in the steps and measures of his power. The steps again, he is hinting at the levels of consciousness. Okay. Every movement of it, every particle of the world of beings it forms is instinct with his presence. At the lowest level, level 1, the divine presence is there, always hiding behind the action and the forms, full of his consciousness, impelled by his will, shaped by his knowledge. So this is what he's saying. Therefore, he is advised to Arjuna is continue to fight. Be identified with the Supreme Being and do what the Supreme Being is telling you to do. So we stop here today.
Unpuissant.
Tell me.
Unpuissant. So, what we should say the meaning of unpuissant?
Can you speak a little less loudly? Because I'm not able to catch the words. You know, my ears don't work very well. I'm sorry. Tell me again.
Unpuissant.
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 Huh? Unpuissant.
Unpuissant.
Unpuissant is a word which means only not powerful.
Powerful.
Puissant is
Okay.
powerful. It's a French word,
Powerful.
puissant. Okay. So,
Okay.
unpuissant means not powerful. All right? Okay.
Yes, Rangada. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Au revoir, Rangada. Thank you, Rangada.
Au revoir.
Thank
Merci
you. Au
beaucoup.
revoir.
Yes, au
Bonne
revoir.
journée.
Yes, same to
Thank
you.
you.
Bonne journée. Have a nice day. That's
Thank you, Rangada.
okay. Sunday. Bye.
Thank you, Ranganath.
Okay.
Namaste.
Cutting